Hello, everyone. I'm Mabel Chan. Welcome to my podcast, One in a Billion. Today, we continue our fall season Find Your Roots special series with a spotlight on Asians in New England. Find Your Roots is about Asian American mothers and daughters, fathers and sons, looking back at the roots of their family history, cultural identity, and personal journey, one person at a time.
My name is Yu Cui Mei, Yu Cui Mui, Yu Tui Mai, Mai Du, Mai Tui Du, or Lin. I was born in Saigon, known as Ho Chi Minh City, in 1976. The roots of my culture is Chinese ethnic, both from my father and my mother's side. I identify racial ethnically Asian American, Chinese Vietnamese American, or Asian, or Chinese, or Vietnamese.
Mai was born months after the fall of Saigon. When her family decided to leave Vietnam, she was just 8 years old, and so began her life as a refugee for months, moving from Saigon to Thailand, then to the Philippines, before finally arriving in Chelsea, Massachusetts in 1984. As an 8-year-old, Mai had a peculiar desire.
When I came to America and I asked my parents and I wanted to go learn Kung Fu in Chinatown, they said, no, you're a girl. You're not supposed to learn Kung Fu.
Mai never gave up until her parents gave in. She started learning and practicing Kung Fu and later Tai Chi since she was 12. After teaching martial arts for over 25 years in Greater Boston, Mai is now well known in the community as Sifu or Master Mai.
The inspiration was never to become a Kung Fu master. The inspiration was just to be with the arts, to embrace the art and live it and have it as a lifestyle.
In this episode, Mai Du reflects on her unusual path to becoming a Kung Fu master. She also talks about her life experiences and the profound influences from her parents that have prepared her for a special calling in life. Here is our conversation. I first met you several years ago when you were on a panel featuring Asians in unconventional careers. I was frankly shocked and inspired when I heard you being introduced as a Kung Fu and Wa Lam certified instructor. You're called Sifu Mai.
Yes.
So my first question is, who inspired you to become a Kung Fu master? Your dad, your mom, your grandparents?
No one inspired me in the sense of becoming a Kung Fu master. It was from a love of the arts, of martial arts. One may think that maybe your parents inspire you, but my parents were very much opposed to the idea of me learning Kung Fu when I brought it up to them at 8 years old.
Why did you bring that up at 8 years old?
I just had this love of martial arts, and I was watching a lot of Hong Kong movies. I asked my brothers in Vietnam if they would take me to the local rec center where they did judo and aikido, and they said, no, you're too young. But when I came to America and I asked my parents and I wanted to go learn Kung Fu in Chinatown, they said, no, you're a girl. You're not supposed to learn Kung Fu. But I just had this deep love. I just knew that I had to do it. I kept asking, and they say, go ask your dad. Dad said, go ask your mom. And I said, that was it. That was the answer.
Both said yes?
Both thought the other said yes. The inspiration was never to become a Kung Fu master. The inspiration was just to be with the arts, to embrace the art and live it and have it as a lifestyle. How I became a Kung Fu instructor, Sifu master, was that there were family friends in the community kept asking me if I would teach their kids. And I kept saying no. I was helping to teach in Boston, Chinatown. They asked again, and I said no. And the third time they asked me, I was pregnant with my son, Thomas. Let's revisit the idea after I have my child. So it was 3 in a row, and 3 was a charm. And I said, I don't have space. We can do it in the driveway. And I started out with that family and then my nieces and nephews and about a dozen young people.
And where was that?
Malden, driveway.
And that was after you gave birth to your son?
Yes.
So and what year was that?
2004.
Oh, 04. Okay.
Yeah, because we opened the Kung Fu school in Malden 2006.
So from listening to you, it appears the market really comes to you. You know, you have been training out of a love for this art and people come to you. I gotta ask you, look back on these movies. I watch a lot of movies from Lei Xiaolong, to Hong Kong martial arts movie. I didn't get inspired to be like them. So I wonder if you could close your eyes and think back on one or two movies or martial arts figures and think back on what about the movement. How did they speak to you?
The Hong Kong movies that inspired me to go into martial art would be Yi Tian Tou Long Gei and Tin Long Bat Bo.
Who's in it? Remind me.
Wang Yong. Yes, the movements, the discipline, but the idea of that you strengthen your body, your mind, and your spirit through martial art training so that you can help the weak and contribute to society. Lo Gin Bat Ping. Meaning that when you are on a path and you see some injustice, you will use your skills and your resources to help. Right. And that idea was really inspiring. There's something about it that just resonated with me strongly. It's just not for yourself. So when I started having my own students, I always say that we train our mind, our body, our spirit so that we're healthy and mentally clear. We promote our fitness and longevity, but that is not just for ourselves. We do it so that we have an able body to be able to add value to society.
I can totally see how it speaks to you conceptually, right? Yes. Intellectually. However, I have to be honest that looking at you, you are so petite. And so were you not self-conscious that you were very petite? It's like, what were you thinking, Ma?
So when I first opened the Kung Fu school in Malden, I was petite. I looked extremely young. I had such a young face. Everybody thought I was still in high school or college. And here I was opening the door and say, I'm teaching martial art, Kung Fu, Sifu. I had men walking through the door, saw that I was a teacher, the instructor, and completely without saying a word, turn around and walk out. And I would say, hey, you're lost.
Oh, wow.
So to your question about self-awareness as to my physique.
Or self-conscious.
I have to tell you that one of the reasons why I also wanted to teach was that I felt that growing up with martial art training, with Kung Fu training, was the empowerment process. I felt really confident growing up as a young girl, walking the street of Chinatown. I mean, at one point living in Chelsea, taking the bus and the T into Chinatown, walk through the red lights district and everything else. And I just felt confident. And also that exposure to the larger society, from a refugee immigrant family with lots of challenges in terms of understanding American culture and navigating a new country, a new culture, a new language. So I felt that learning the martial art was extremely important in my formative years. So I wanted to do that for young people in the community, especially in Malden. Was my hometown, and I said that in my heart, I wanted to give back. And that was my platform to build community.
Well, I certainly can see that, and with your educational background as well, and, your vision and how the movies moved you in those ways. But my question is, I'm just as petite as you are. I would not dare to learn something that feels painful or that I may get hurt. I guess it's like before you decided. What made you think that you were cut out for this?
It's an innate knowing. Some people, you meet them and they're in their 70s, 80s, 90s, and they're still so vibrant, so energetic and spirited. You just look at them and say, how do they do it? And it's really the mind, the intention. And I think ever since I can remember, I just never felt
inhibited.
Exactly. My dad, he always said to us, and in particular me, you can do anything you want to do. Anything, because I believe in you. And so he can just do anything. There was no hesitation. Having gone through the refugee experience and having seen my parents gave up everything that they had and uprooted the entire family. My parents lived through the Vietnam War, living through refugee camps, and then coming to America and starting all over with nothing. relearn a whole language, learn another culture, and then try to embrace everything. There has never been a doubt in my mind that if you have heart, you just do it. And that's just how I've always lived.
I love it. Listening to you, with the heart, you can do it. It makes me think back on my experience when I was watching TV, but less the martial arts, but more in terms of throwing yourself into the character and believing I was one of them. So my question for you is, think back on when you're watching those moves in those movies, whoever the character is. Did you feel instantly or immediately after you want to move like them?
Yes. When I was watching all these kung fu movies and all that action, I just knew that they were familiar. My body, the energies, the spirit of it all wanted to just explode out of my being.
Take you over.
Yes. And put me into a frequency that would, either activate something that was deep inside of me that I've always had, and I still feel it this day.
I love how you just put it, activate a frequency. And I think that it is maybe in your nerve system or in your muscles, something inside the body, right? Well, we won't get too technical unless you can tell me.
Well, I'm going to tell you the story, and it's a little airy. When I was very young, I was a sick child, about 10 months old. And my mom's friend practice herbal medicine and acupuncture. She came knocking on my mom's door and I said, I know your daughter is sick and I'm supposed to be here to
revive her.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so she taught her, certain traditional ways of getting herbs and medicine. My mom did it exactly how she instructed her to do, with raw coconut and herbs and steaming it up and letting me drink in. Exactly the 9 days after I got well, I was very, very sick.
Wow.
And then my parents were still worried, and she said, don't worry. When she grows older, she's going to be a martial art master.
Wow.
She will do kung fu and she will become a martial art
They're
master.
Fortune teller.
Yeah, she's known to be one. And I guess it's a part of my destiny.
You've said that Kung Fu is a form of fitness for all ages, and practicing it can greatly benefit the body, mind, and spirit. Tell me more about that, your beliefs.
We hear a lot about grit, right? Grit is this notion of persevering and not giving up. Kung Fu in the Chinese characters mean Gong Fu. Gong means work, Fu means person. So I always tell my students, it comes down to a person committing to hard work over time. Work, time, and repetition. These are the three elements that over time, that's how you build mastery. When we do that for our body and our mind and our spirit, we're actually telling our body that we do care for all parts of the physical elements of our body. It may be the cells, the bones, the ligaments, the tendons, the muscles, and our internals. We're in tune with our body. It's built in to make sure that we strengthen flexibility, gain and maintain balance, and of course, build strength. The mind is clear, which lead to the spirit having full alignment with the universe. So all that coming together will produce ultimate or optimal health.
You also talked about the traditions that are rooted in the Kung Fu culture, very rich and grounding to one's identity. What do you mean by that?
Well, being Chinese from Vietnam, actually 75% Chinese and a quarter Vietnamese, martial art has always kind of been a part of the heritage of the Chinese culture. With Tai Chi, it has the respect for the soft energy. Kung Fu is the hard energy. So having the balance of the yin and the yang, and then understanding the history of the Kung Fu and my own style, that's really the lineage and the heritage that is beyond my physical existence in this space and time. So for me, embracing the tradition, the heritage, to preserve and promote is a really important part of what I do.
Let me just ask you this for provocative reasons. You're in America. Why is it important to ground your cultural identity in Kung Fu?
It's my calling. I just had a passion for it ever since I was young. I begged to learn. I was permitted to learn, and I was blessed with a style and a space and a lineage and the teaching. And I continued to research and learn to grow. It was not my idea to open a Kung Fu school. Folks came to me and wanted me to do this. So it's a calling that this was kind of what I should do. When I got my master's in education, and I worked for a few years with the Red Cross and at Harvard. Then I opened up my Kung Fu school. And eventually, it was so successful that the school was a real important and rich platform for me to build community that I could not handle both a full-time job and having hundreds of students on the side. So I decided to resign from my full-time job and just focus on the Kung Fu school and see what else.
What was your full-time job?
I was the director for youth programs and volunteer resources and international social services at one point for the American Red Cross of Mass Bay. I was doing a lot of, humanitarian work and community work and youth empowerment work, and I loved it.
In America, in a capitalistic society, the market was knocking on your door. So your cultural identity that is so rooted and well-developed in Kung Fu training and continuously challenging yourself to that discipline and learning, you really have carved a competitive edge for yourself.
I also have used the Kung Fu school as a platform for community building. I worked very hard with intentionality to create a safe and brave space for diverse students. We've always been very inclusive, very progressive. We have done non-conventional things in terms of activism, community service work, even political campaigns.
Let me ask you, how long were you training as a Kung Fu practitioner, student, before you set up shops?
1988 to 2006.
Wow. 18 years.
Yeah, continuously, even throughout when I was pregnant.
Tell me, then, after your parents both said yes, you were 12?
I was 12 and I was so excited. I dragged my cousins, my two cousins, both girls. We went to Chinatown. We wanted to sign up. The first storefront that had the word Kung Fu, I ran up there and I was like knocking on the door. The door opened and it was my sifu, this Jewish man. I was like, oh, a white male. But I saw the traditional altar, the Kung Fu altar in the front, and I look around and I saw these like weaponries for Kung Fu practice. And I was like, this is it. My blood was just boiling. I was just like, this is it. I was so excited.
Let me in. Let me in.
Every day I just could not wait after school to run home, grab my Kung Fu clothes and catch the bus and the T, go there, train, go early, have my formal class, day after, did more training. Like my sifu had to kick me out. I was not only physically practicing, but I was mentally practicing.
Wow.
I was just in love and I was like in bliss. I went 6 to 7 classes a week because I would show up during the adult class or before. I was just so obsessed.
You're a daughter, you're also a mother. So when you identified as Vietnamese, Chinese, Asian American, how about your parents? How do they self-identify? And tell me, where are their roots in China and their journey to Vietnam?
My father's father was from China directly. He was a gulay, like the coolie. So he traveled just anywhere there would be work. So they landed in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And then he took roots in Vietnam and married a Vietnamese woman. And unfortunately, my dad really never knew his mom. She left. And then at age 7, my paternal grandfather passed. So he was taken in by his father's older brothers. He was really struggling and he had to learn Chinese. And we have a lineage of Chinese herbal doctors. We're all in the healing work. That's part of the DNA. I see them all the same. A healing through herbs, a healing through qi, or a healing through practice. It's all healing.
You see that seed being passed on from your father.
Yes. And he had such a love for that. My father was so proud of being Chinese from Vietnam. The Chinese in Vietnam did a lot to preserve their Chinese heritage because they were in a foreign land.
Wasn't it hard for them as well in terms of being accepted?
It was hard because there was also discrimination against Chinese in America, even though Vietnam had a history of China colonizing them for 1,000 years.
So your father's generation and your mother too, perhaps.
Yes.
They had experience of how to band together against perceived discrimination.
My father was a teacher. He taught Chinese language. There were Chinese schools popping in the countryside, and my mom was also living in the countryside, and my dad was traveling around different countries, different parts of the countryside, different regions in the South Vietnam. He was born in Gia Yin. He learned all the Chinese characters and the language from his uncle. He was such an intelligent guy. He picked it up enough for him to eventually become a principal. My mom was very forward-thinking. She was born in countryside in Long Binh. She wanted to go to school, but it was so old school then. All the girls were not really given a chance to go to school.
How did they meet?
My dad heard about my mom being like a really respectful young lady. He should go and try to meet her through social circles. My mother, in her mind, she was very clear. She said, I have to get out of here. I don't want to be in the countryside. If I'm going to have children, they can't be stuck here with no education.
Tell me about your parents' journey to America from Vietnam. What are the moments that still stick with you, that shape you?
We moved, when I was born, we were in Saigon already, in the city. I was the only one who got born in the city. We were dirt poor, like so poor that they had no money to give to family friends during Lunar New Year times. By the time I was about 5, 6, 7, we were starting to do better financially.
Through the herbal medicine.
Through the herbal medicine. But my parents give up everything, abandon everything, and go to another country.
How did that come about?
It's the UN Family Reunification Program. We were sponsored by our relatives in France. But then when the US decided to take refugees as well, then we switched over because my grandmother and my aunts escaped Vietnam. And so they started doing paperwork to sponsor us and as refugees.
What did your family do when the war began?
The village they lived in, the bomb was dropped into the center of the marketplace. And our house got burnt down. Everything was completely annihilated. Lost everything, then moving again and having really no place to put roots in. Knowing that my parents went through war, so many years of war, struggle with poverty, struggle with make a living, then giving all that up, pick up the entire family, go through refugee camps, come to America, and then they did not know any English. And my father had a hard time finding a job because of language. It was actually harder for my father to find a job than my mother because she went straight into some program in the community where they help her find a housekeeping job at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Cambridge. And she worked there until she retired. When she retired, I bought this Chinese painting of a very old woman with her hands like all gnarled up and knuckles all big, but holding a little child. I gave her that because I know how hard she worked to put us through school and get us to America and establish a new life and be somebody. And it was her vision. When she was a young girl, my dad, he was so curious all the time and he was always trying to learn English. This man was recording different cartoons with caption, and then he would replay, listen to it and write it out and replay like over and over and over again to learn the English because he wanted to know English. He was so determined. And he had piles and piles and piles of tapes. He was watching Mr. Ed, Donald Reeds, Dennis the Menace, Flintstone.
I love it.
Everything. Sesame Street. My father, because he was an educator, he said, society shapes human people and people shape society.
Right.
So you always have to know that cycle and we have to be an active part of both.
And you were part of this whole exodus from Saigon to Thailand to the Philippines and to America. What was any special memory that you observed about your parents, how they survived, that still sticks with you, that maybe is a driving force for you?
I will say a couple of things. One is that the uncertainty about what will come. produces anxiety in people, right? I mean, that's the unfamiliarity. My mother always would have faith in praying, to ask the ancestors and deities to bless us and to watch over us. That deep sense of connection to something higher than ourselves.
She's Buddhist?
Yes, we're Buddhist ancestralists. The one thing about that period of time, my parents were always kind of worried, but at the same time, there's kind of like a sense of power
that transcends the immediate surrounding.
Yes. And then
you can see it.
Yeah, I saw it and I felt it, and it felt as like they're grounded. It's a sense of perseverance and resiliencies that many communities and struggling communities have. The courage. It took so much courage for them to just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah, they just did it. And my mother, we fled Vietnam. We fled communist regime. They were scary. Right before we left the country, the government came to our house and started like accusing us of doing something illegal and all that. And all they really wanted was to
take over your stuff.
Yes. If not, like just have us to give them money so they will leave us alone. During wartime and throughout poverty, struggling and building, you can't do it alone. It's community. And so when one family help you, then that's called yan means human or person.
Right.
Ting means love or care. So there's always going to be like the care and love between heart to heart, people to people. That's how, we can persevere and be resilient. So my parents are very, very clear about embracing Yanting.
同舟共濟.
Yes. So
the boat is rocking. We're all together. We're banding
we're all together.
You talked so vividly and so beautifully, powerfully about your parents' ability to survive. And so clearly the circumstances were so tough. And so it's struggle, clearly, life or death, and learning a lot. I'm just curious how you would talk about sacrifice. Have you thought about what your mom or your dad has sacrificed? And how does that teach you to do the same? Now you're a mother.
So I say that my mom sacrificed tremendously. Firstly, she probably never thought about being with somebody for true love. It was about forward thinking and for her next generation. We have 5 living children, picking everybody up and then going to a new land, sacrificing a lot of comfort and a sense of dignity, because as refugees or as immigrants who are new to an area, there was a lot of moments of indignity, how people treat you, what you have to do to feed your family. My mom with arthritis, so much pain. I massage her every night because she was in so much pain as a housekeeper. How it has shaped my life is that I have a son. After his graduation, he's now in college after his high school graduation. I just look at him and then I don't know why, but I said, please know that I never lived fully for you. I did everything I can as a mother for you, but know that I never lived fully just for you. So don't feel that you have the burden to have to give everything back to me. You are released.
Wow.
I said to him, I know that you will love me and I will love you with all my heart and you will the same. But just know that from here on till the day my last breath, I live my life for the community too.
Wow. You're saying to your son basically that you do not owe me your future.
Exactly. And that was like his graduation dinner that we came out with.
Wow.
You asked this question about sacrifice, especially my mother being a woman. But I just reflected a lot through all her actions and her love and her care for the family. And I also see people where they live solely for their kids. And I feel that when the kids get older, like they feel so guilty that they have to always be there for their parents because they see how much their parents had to do and they lost like a chunk of their lives or years. So I felt the need to say, you don't owe me your future.
Thank you, Maidu.
My thing with my dad is very much his day-to-day life. Let me service others, and that will kind of, sorry, I'm getting like choked up thinking about it. Let me service others and that will come back.
That is Neil Modi, an Indian-American media entrepreneur in New York. His father passed away suddenly 2 years ago. But before that, Neil had a chance to record an audio interview with him and his mother, who's still living in New Jersey. Neil will talk about his parents' journey to America, their hardship and successes, and what Neil has learned from his parents to become the best that he can be. Tune into that episode in 3 weeks, December 12th. 1 in a Billion Find Your Roots special series is made possible in part by a generous grant from the Phi Lambda Charitable Trust. We also rely on listeners like you to sustain our production. Please consider supporting our work with a donation. To donate, just go to our website at www.oneinaBillionVoices.org. Click Donate. Your donation is tax deductible. 1 in a Billion is produced by our sound engineer and designer Brian Latwinowicz, and our lovely theme song is composed by Brad McCarthy.